One of the most important figures of the Enlightenment era and of the Augustan or neoclassical age in Britain would be Alexander Pope. Born in 1688, the year of England's glorious revolution, the man grew to be one of the most important poets and translators and satirists, and quite frankly, wits in a very witty age. He was born in London into a successful merchant family, but because of their Catholicism, he was limited. He was limited in his educational opportunities and his professional prospects, and in fact, his family could not even live in the city of London, so they had to move to the outskirts of Windsor Forest. He was from a young age, around adolescence, very ill. He contracted a form of tuberculosis that caused respiratory problems, gave him a hunchback, and just crippled him. It capped his height. He stopped growing. The tallest he ever got was around 4.5 feet tall. Perhaps because of some of this, he never married, but he did maintain many close relationships, primarily close friendships with some of the leading literary figures of the age, like Dr. John Arbuthnot, Jonathan Swift, Joseph Addison, and Richard Steele, leading literary lights who accepted him very early on and helped promote his career. And his career took off early. He was very successful, and notably because he had no other professional options. He could not expect, like Swift always did, that he would be granted some preferment in government or in the church or in some, basically given a job or a sinecure even, where he can just maintain that position while doing his writing. He had to make it on his own by his own writing skills. Obviously, he was not going to be a physical laborer, and his family was comfortable enough that he really didn't have to do that. But because of his genius, he started writing and publishing and finding great success very early. He started publishing brilliant pieces. He sold translations of Homer, both the Iliad and the Odyssey, that are still held in some regard today. He did that on subscription, which was very remunerative, and he was making some money out of that. His poetic style also opened up the doors. This was an increasingly literate age. During his lifetime and during the centuries of the 17th and 18th centuries, literacy really skyrocketed throughout England. So you could suddenly make a living writing stuff for a public hungry for something to read, and he benefited from that. He was so successful that he was able to go, again, at a terribly old age. He was able to go and buy himself a nice little villa out in the countryside, essentially a suburb of London, and start living the life of a country gentleman. Notably, this also aligned him, let's say, politically more with the landed aristocracy and the gentlemanly countryside retreats of the Tory party in London, and he started to move politically over towards them. This is around the time also that he became great friends with Swift, another noted Tory, and away from, let's say, Addison and Steele, who were in the trenches of London, in the heart of the Whig power base. And so you can see some interesting political and philosophical migrations going on there, a little fluidity. Pope followed his idol Dryden as paradigmatic examples of the so-called Augustan age, named for the Roman emperor who brought about relative peace and prosperity following the civil wars of Julius Caesar and the institution of Pax Romana. Pope openly modeled a lot of his work on the Roman poet Horace in this regard. In this, the ethos of the Restoration art sought to lower the temperature in society after the divisions of the English Civil War and propagate the lighthearted fun of the new era. So, in Pope, look for the couplet. It is neat, it is organized, it is rational, controlled, it is bite-sized nuggets of meaning with those curiously and cleverly end-stopped lines. Everything is simple and organized and hospital cornered, and it is satisfying without being overwhelming. Within that, however, you can find an awful lot of metrical variety. The individual lines break free of simple dog trot rhythms. There is a great deal of shifting of emphasis, shifting of stress from one line to another, from one syllable to another. And this adds a great degree of musicality and drama and can make it less monotonous with that regular rhyme forcing itself upon readers. Within the outside the formal characteristics of that, you can also look for an objectified perspective. It is very rational. It is dispassionate, even bemused, but above all, it is placid. It is not meant to excite. This is again calming down the readership. Within that, you can see a great emphasis on universality rather than individuality. The particular is no longer in fashion. Passion is no longer in fashion. And it is all addressed to a certain commonality, a certain universality. Everybody has these problems. Everybody has these identifications that his work addresses. And so it is, again, a uniting activity. The reading Pope is about bringing people together rather than speaking individually to one of them as against the majority. To do that also within this new populace, this new expanded readership, there is a great emphasis on clarity. The opacity of Renaissance art in work by English masters like Donne and Milton, that is shied away from at this point. There is no emphasis on difficulty, on puzzling, on mysteries. Mystery is very much out in the Augustan age. Everything has to be clear and light and easily perceived, which is helpful for an inexpert and largely at times illiterate, or not illiterate, but uneducated, unformally educated readership. And because of this, you can see a great emphasis broadly across all Augustan art on nature. And nature not in the wilderness sense, not in the go outside and climb a mountain sense like Petrarch, but rather in a preference for seeing the existing orders of human nature as the way things ought to be. There is a tremendous effort on not rocking the boat. Everything is as it should be. Human nature is what it is supposed to be, ordained by God, and so we should all just go along with that. A very conservative perspective, obviously, when you get into political realms, but it is also a very conservative element culturally. The emphasis is on a kind of continuity of art as opposed to revolutionary aspects within it. Pope died at age 56, and his reputation sank largely throughout the 19th century when the Romantics rejected his calm and his emphasis on artificiality. Romantics generally preferred great authenticity, individuality, and of course passion. But Pope has largely climbed back into critical esteem over the past century. Artifice and the self-limiting modesty of the poetic voice Pope used have risen in aesthetic value, and he remains today as one of the greatest pillars of the neoclassical age.